Hi, I'm Suzanne Siracuse. Welcome to season 3 of my podcast, focused on the future, keys to building a profitable, sustainable, and impactful business. I'm excited to be partnering with wealthmanagement.com on this. This series will focus on what firms need to embrace to ensure their growth and success for the future. And you'll hear from industry leaders and advisors on what is working for them. I have a great lineup of guests in store, and today I'm speaking with Claire O'Keefe. Claire is the partner and head of partner development at Cerity Partners. Founded in 2009, Cerity Partners is a nationally recognized full-service wealth management firm serving high and ultra-high net worth individuals and their families, businesses and their leadership teams, and nonprofit organizations. Welcome, Claire. It's wonderful to see you. Thanks for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me. Wonderful to see you too.
And I almost feel like we should turn the entire podcast into tell us about your trip to Italy and Ireland. So for those listeners, Claire just got back from an amazing trip and I'm leaving in a few hours for Italy. So we could just talk about the importance of getting away and that mental health break. And I haven't done that in 2 years. So I'm very, very excited but even more excited to talk with you today about a few things. And the first question that I always ask is, how did you get your start in the wealth management industry? You have a Irish accent, I know. And so I'd love to hear your backstory.
Well, I'm also slightly green with envy that you're taking off to Italy and that my trip to Italy is over. So if you'd like me to pop in your suitcase, I'm more than happy to do that. Yes, born and raised in the southwest of Ireland, actually right before my trip to Italy. I was home in Ireland celebrating my parents' 50th wedding anniversary.
Wow,
so nice,
that's
small,
amazing.
intimate Irish gathering of 85 family members. Ironically, we had the pleasure of having the priest who married my parents 50 years ago do a blessing, which was pretty special and incredible. So, yes, definitely born and raised, huge family at home. I refer to when we talk about wealth, a wealth of love is certainly what I grew up with, and so incredibly blessed. Also, just a wealth of opportunity in the sense of travel has always been my, I like to say, drug of choice. And so at a ripe old age of 21, I came to the US for the first time and just loved everything about it. And so my unconventional path to the role that I now have really was fostered in travel. I was an elementary school teacher at home in Ireland, decided to take a career break, said I'm going to travel the world for a couple of years with a friend of mine, and ultimately just fell into the wealth management space, working with a boutique wealth management firm in New York. That was probably 22 years ago now, and the rest is history.
So what is so special is that you have the priest that married your parents 50 years ago. He must be, in his 70s or 80s by now? It's amazing.
Certainly is. Yeah, that we were discussing, and we believe that my parents were either the very first, or if not the first, maybe the second or third couple that he married when he had first become a priest. So pretty special for all of them.
Pretty special is right. And the other thing that I think is really interesting, I happen to be working on an executive brief with Charles Schwab right now on incoming talent into this industry. And a lot of people immediately think students, but career changers is a huge part of those that are successfully transitioning into this industry. So, and you're a great example of a career changer, a school teacher, and the ability to use those transferable skills to into our profession. So I love what a great example of someone that was in a different profession, and look at you now. I love it.
Work hard, put your head down, and surround yourself with good people.
That's a great bit of advice. So again, I wanted to also say congratulations on being named the M&A Leader of the Year. That was just at the recent Wealth Management Industry Awards. And that's such a well-deserved recognition for you. And with all of your experience advising firms in transition, what are the biggest trends that you're seeing right now amongst firms that are either considering selling or considering partnering or joining another firm? What are you seeing?
Well, thank you first and foremost for the congrats. It was definitely a fun evening. Fun evening, just in terms of friends in the industry, which I think is the most important thing. Both new friends and old friends, but definitely an a humbling and exciting experience to have that on that particular evening. I think trends from the perspective of firms that are kind of looking to consider their strategic options, definitely remove run the business hats. And that's been kind of, I think, a consistent theme for a long time. But I think the complexity of running an RA just continues to increase. And at the end of the day, when you start to think about where you're putting your time, what gives you the most joy, I think many of the pioneers in the industry in particular started an RIA so that they could do right by clients and spend more time with clients, both serving and developing those client relationships. I think the complexity of running a business, right, continues to interfere with that. So certainly remove the run the business hats, enhance services for clients. Probably next to that, think of examples, private markets investments, right, which has become table stakes for high and ultra high net worth families. And just establishing that and building that in and of itself is not just an economic decision, right? You need to have great talent within your organization to do that, tax planning and compliance. And I'd say like family office type services particularly for ultra high net worth families. So those are some of the kind of the key drivers that I've heard certainly in the last number of years. And then probably, top of list, I'll put it under the category just of growth opportunities, certainly for next gen. I think it's one of the most wonderful things about the wealth management industry, specifically the RIA space, is just that care about succession and care about, next gen, both in terms of clients and colleagues. And so wanting to have growth opportunities. So organic growth channels. At the end of the day, organic growth is the lifeblood of any firm, right? And so making sure there are those opportunities to participate, the opportunity for equity and ownership. We're in an industry where you can have an incredible professional journey, but it can also be a personal wealth creation story and journey, and I'll share it has been mine, many of my partners within our firm, and certainly many within the industry. And then I think just training and development. At the end of the day, you can't go from, I shouldn't say it can't, maybe you can, but how much better to go from being, a young professional in the industry to have dedicated training and development, not just around your technical acumen, but really about management and leadership training and the power skills, as my human capital colleagues refer to them, right? Communication, sales training, et cetera. Just how do you hone in and refine those skills? And at the end of the day, it's all about training and development. So I think for all of those kind of categories have been some of the key trends that we've been seeing. And there are many reports, as we all know, that come out, particularly for some of the leading investment bankers in our space. I think some of those trends, they move in position in terms of what's 1, 2, or 3, right? Depending on any given year. Succession is clearly in there, particularly for firms where they haven't developed that next gen to truly take over the business. And also the reality is just the value of what has been created has made it more challenging for next gen to actually be the ones who fully redeem the equity of an outgoing partner or partners. So some of those are the main trends that I've been seeing, and they've been pretty consistent, quite frankly, over the last number of years.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You named so many important ones. Succession planning. I just was at the Future Proof conference and I moderated a panel on that. And FP Transition CEO Brad Bierman said we should be calling it sustainability planning, because a lot of times, you have that word succession and you think it is the end of something when it's really just planning for the future, right? And to make your business sustainable. Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting. Organic growth. I mean, that's, I think, one of the first things that advisors are looking for as they consider growing their practice, and what are the strategies that are working, et cetera. I feel like you're reading my outline for the executive brief that I'm working on with Schwab, which is about the next gen talent and how are we setting them up for success. And training is critical. And I just think that there's so many firms out there that aren't set up to train, not because they don't want to, but just they don't have the bandwidth to do it. And so you really hit on a lot of interesting things. And in this brief that I'm working on, there's some firms that we're highlighting that are doing some cool stuff. So in any case, those are really spot on for sure. So when you look across the industry, what are you seeing really separates top performing firms from the rest, and how do those differentiators within those top performing firms really translate into stronger valuations for an M&A deal?
Mm-hmm. Well, I hope Brad doesn't mind, but I may have to borrow his sustainability planning because I love that phraseology. It's so true. And there's an element, right? People talk a lot about succession planning. I've always also referred to, what's your emergency operating plan? At the end of the day, unfortunate things happen in life, and so you should be planning all along the way, right, for that emergency that hopefully never fully arises. But Brad, kudos to you. Like that phraseology. We should start using that in the industry at large. So
I
to directly
agree.
answer
I
your question,
agree.
yeah, on the question around what separates top performing firms from the rest, I just based on my own experience of, if we're fortunate enough to be in conversations with prospective partners, what are the things that we look at? First and foremost for us, it's culture. And I know a lot of people say that for our firm in particular, we're a partnership. It's about coming together as partners and colleagues in one firm, bringing our collective experience and capabilities, but quite frankly, just that cultural alignment of saying we're going to be better together than apart. And I've found that firms who've joined us who have that same core DNA of the we before me, that for us is the signature. Hey, we're going to be successful together because we have that same cultural alignment, and we'll figure things out together. I think in terms of on paper and numerically, what are the things that to look at? Strong net organic growth is the strongest driver of valuation for any firm. Now, there's also the making sure that you're not having strong net organic growth relative to driving new and attracting new clients every year, and then you've got clients walking out the back door. So I would complement that with making sure that you just have this exemplary client experience. Within our industry, quite frankly, even firms who are not having an exemplary client experience tends to have pretty high client retention rates, but those who are really accelerating and doing right by clients are having just that experience where you're expanding existing client relationships, you're growing those client relationships, you're welcoming additional clients because your clients are having such a great experience. And that goes back to a little bit of the training and development. You have to invest in training and development for a broad group of colleagues to surround that client. And much of it is EQ as well as the IQ and the ability to have that technical acumen. And then I think the other differentiator is really from an ownership standpoint. Broadly held ownership, top performing firms tend to have that, meaning there's an opportunity for many to experience and share in the success of the personal wealth creation. And so there's often that friction, right, where you've got a firm where very few are benefiting from the overall growth of the firm in terms of personal wealth creation. You can maybe have many individuals who are making incredibly competitive cash compensation, but at the end of the day, if you've got high performing next gen, they're likely not going to stay within the firm for very long unless they know that they're going to have an opportunity within that firm to be part of the future and to have their own personal wealth creation story as part of that.
Yeah. And that's such a great point, because it's like there's so many owners that may be being like penny wise and pound foolish, right? Where they don't want to give up a piece of the business, but your valuation is going to go down if you're not including and having more partners in the firm that get a piece of the pie. And again, back to that succession sustainability panel that I did, FP Transitions had a really interesting data point. I think it was 48% firms get a higher valuation if they have multiple owners. So just that is another, I think, lever that you're alluding to. And of course, culture, you do hear it all the time. And I don't think that we can say it enough, but it really does depend. I remember talking to a firm that was about to acquire or they were considering acquiring a firm, and they all went out to dinner and it just didn't mesh. And the deal was called off. And I think that that's really interesting to really be thinking about. It's almost like you don't get married right away. You got to date a little bit, and you do your due diligence and make sure that you're in alignment on your values, et cetera. Is this firm going to be the firm that I want to be a part of for the long term? So those are I think great attributes of some of the top performing firms. I totally see the same thing. And so just like that one firm I was alluding to, I imagine not every deal makes it across the finish line for you all either. So have there been situations where you've chosen to walk away from a deal? And if so, what were some of those factors that led to that decision?
Yeah, but to your point on cultural alignment, I think the space it's so busy, and there are very what I would refer to as compressed processes. I think incredible opportunity in that there are so many different, I'll say, shapes and sizes and opportunities for having a strategic partner, whatever that looks like. So for anybody contemplating saying, oh, I want to explore the marketplace, my strongest words of advice relative to that, for what it's worth, is just spend the time with people who are within the firm. Certainly, there's often a defined process when you're working with investment bankers who would do a great job in terms of moving process along, but focus on the people piece of it too, because at the end of the day, that's going to be your future, and understanding what that truly means. When you referred to dinner, of course, now I'm giving all my secret sauce away, but that's really important to me. Going out to dinner and, quite frankly, observing how somebody interacts with the waitstaff. It's quite frankly probably very emblematic of how they will interact with an operations team or human capital team when other eyes are not on them. And so, from a walk away, I've many conversations every day of the week, and there are many that I don't even go on to stage 2 with, when there's a lot more of the me before we are a we before me conversation, a firm. And so when a lot of the I comes out in conversations, like, that's just not going to be the right cultural fit. And we've certainly also, reputational risk. Today, I have the pleasure of being a part of a firm. We have about 1,500 colleagues, 300 of us, myself included, are owners of this business. Like, this is our firm. And so anything that would jeopardize the livelihood of 1,500 colleagues, the absolute opportunity for all of us to continue to grow this firm, is not something that we would take on. And so some of those things are unfortunate. And had a situation where an individual had a bankruptcy pretty early in their career, and it was something that came out a little bit later, but it was not something that we couldn't welcome them to the partnership for that reason, because they are a financial advisor. And so to have a financial advisor who had that was just not going to be something that would have been reputationally good for us as a firm. That didn't make that conversation easy. And the individual was not a reflection on who they are as a person in any way, shape, or form. But the responsibility and the stewardship of the partnership is tied into making those decisions that are more about the collective than any one individual as part of that.
Yeah. And just another great point on why having multiple partners and equity partners in your firm makes sense. Because, if somebody has skin in the game, they're going to just naturally be more, I would say, do more due diligence around things like that and have more consideration around things like that. So just another reason why looking at providing equity, not for all, because it doesn't make sense for everyone, obviously, but
Great.
for those that really are your top performers and that you want leading into the future. I think that's just another selling point for that too. It's so interesting, just the little things that can go wrong in a deal and the warning signs that you can see, and just pay attention to them, right? Like, pay attention to your instincts, I think, as well, right? A little bit of that EQ. It's not just about the spreadsheets, but it's also about do you want to, share a meal with that person, or would that be painful? If it's painful, it's probably not the right partnership, right?
That is for sure.
And we've all had those, right?
Yeah,
exactly. We've all had those. So, again, with all of these research reports coming out, it's no secret the M&A space is busier than ever, record number of transactions year over year. So looking ahead, what do you see as the future for smaller firms and solo advisors, can they still thrive, or will increasing demands around technology investment and compliance issues and just scaling the business make it harder for them to compete independently?
Yeah, the activity that, as you were referring to, and just kind of year over year, I think there's so much focus and attention on that. I think there's less of a focus on the reality that there are many RIAs formed year over year. In addition to that, so there are, give or take round numbers, 15,000 independent wealth management firms that are out there, and we talk about, from an M&A standpoint, the stats somewhere in the 300, give or take, every year. So there's still such opportunity. I would from any one person, I think people just have to answer that for themselves in terms of what is important to them on a day to day. My own perspective, for what it's worth, I do see that it's more complex and complicated. To try to be the jack of all trades, quite frankly, master of none, is a challenge. I did that for much of my career in much more modestly sized firm. It was an incredible opportunity for me to hone in, both in terms of some skills, but also a little bit of, okay, what gives me joy and excitement and energy every day? For me, it's people. Secondarily to that process, being stuck in technology or compliance, those are things that did not give me energy. And so I think, is it possible? Of course it's possible. And I think only any one person can answer that for themselves. I would say, from my vantage point, somebody who has a particular niche area of expertise, right? That specialty of expertise, there'll probably be demand for it. And, some individuals really do want to be, I'll say, quote unquote, by themselves as a solo advisor, however defined in terms of their area of expertise, because that's just what works for them. And so they should continue to do that. I think the sustainability of that for the long term, or the personal wealth creation story of that, can become more of a challenge, but that's not always important to everybody. So I think for each individual firm, each individual owner and or advisor within the industry kind of have to answer that for themselves. But I recently had somebody share with me, to get to become $1 billion RIA was like, that was the gold standard. And he goes, then we got to $1 billion, and he's suddenly like, now it's $5 billion, because just the demands and it's the speed of everything. When you look into the future and you think about, and I say the future, we're in it right now with AI. What does that do, and what is the revolutionization of that going to be for our industry, quite frankly, for our world at large, in terms of many industries? Today I have the privilege of doing what I do all day, every day, the things that I love to do. And I have colleagues who are exploring that simultaneously. That's just one of the benefits of scale that we have experienced, of just being able to have dedicated leadership. And so the velocity, the speed by which you can achieve things when you have dedicated leadership. And that doesn't mean there's not lots of demands and stressors. Of course there are, to make that happen. But you can start to do a lot more, and the economies of scale make that easier. But being part of a growing firm is not something that everybody wants to have or experience. They may be happy with more of and I say it very respectfully, a lifestyle practice, because that works for them. And sometimes that lifestyle practice is for a defined period of time. Raising a family, mm-hmm. wanting to be very actively involved and having the flexibility to do that. It's wonderful. Right? It's just wonderful that in our industry, if you're an advisor, you hopefully have an evergreen contract. And so a client is a client for life, unless they fire you or you fire them. That's a pretty incredible and privileged space to be in, when you compare and contrast that to more transactional type businesses, where it's eat what you kill every year. That's just a different lifestyle.
Yeah, I think that you answered that so well. It really does depend. I think it's harder than it probably ever has been to be that lifestyle practice. I just had on an advisor that's a smaller advisor. I think it's just him and some of his team, like support team. But he's got a niche, and he's loves mm-hmm. what he does, and has, a great partner with his, broker dealer RIA. But maybe that's great for 20 years or 15 years or 5 years, whatever it may be. But I do think with all of especially you can't be an expert on managing clients, managing a business, AI tools, all of those things. There's just so many balls in the air that I would think it would be difficult for anyone to do that. But it all comes down to, you're right. What makes you happy? What are your clients looking for? And what do you want to be focused on right now? So, but again, the trend, I think, with technology that's come in is, listen, it's done amazing things for our world, but it also has complicated things. And as a small business, while technology can enable you to do a lot of things, it also is challenging because it's moving so fast. I'm going to be at a conference in a few weeks around where it's all focused on AI. In fact, I think someone from your firm, I think your CTO is going to be there too.
Stefan Ludlow,
and
yes,
it's all
correct.
about, yes, exactly. And it's really all these new solutions that are coming in. I don't know how people can keep track of it all. And so that is one of the benefits, I would think, of being part of a larger firm. But to your point, it really depends on where you are in your journey, and keep asking yourself, am I having fun? Am I loving what I'm doing? I think that's
Absolutely.
great advice. Great advice. So I can't believe it, but we are at the end of our podcast. I always ask the same question, with the title and the theme of the podcast focused on the future, keys to building a profitable, sustainable, and impactful business in mind. What's your last line to our audience? What key takeaway do you want to leave?
I often refer to the magic of our partnership as our people. And so being acutely focused on people, so surrounding yourself, being part of a firm where, number one, you have fun, you respect the people that you're working with, but that you have, from a sustainability and profitability standpoint, that you have a group where you can divide and conquer and have complementary skill sets. So a little bit tied into kind of the things that we talked about, a group who are acutely focused on organic growth. At the end of the day, you have to be profitable, you have to be growing. Complement that with having a group of people who are incredibly focused on what is the colleague experience and making sure that individuals are growing within the partnership, having a growth trajectory, having that, in our case, path to partnership and understanding what that means. And then having a group of colleagues focused on that client experience and that experience of enhanced services, the experience of being anticipatory. Very much it's, okay, what are clients asking more of? But quite frankly, what should we bring into our clients? At the end of the day, life is just busier for everybody. So if we focus on enhancing the client and colleague experience, leveraging technology where we can to give more time for the relationship and the rapport building, that to me, it takes the combination of all of that. I don't think it is any one thing, but at the core, we're in a people business. We're in a people industry. And so if you are surrounding yourself with the right people, focused on a vision and managing a firm and a business to, very disciplined around what are your investments? What are those investments going to yield? If you invest $1, is it going to produce 4? If you invest $1, is it going to produce 50 cents, right? Those are two different equations. And the outcome of those investments can mean different things. But it is that alignment and making sure that you're focused on having the right people rowing in the boat, or as I like to say, get on the rocket ship. Doesn't matter what seat you're on the rocket ship, just get on the rocket ship and have some fun doing it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And again, the people piece is just, it all starts and ends there, in my opinion, as well. I think you have to have great teams. And by the way, that's hard to do. It's hard to build. It's hard to find those people. It's hard to all have this, be rowing in the same direction all the time. But I do believe that is maybe the biggest differentiator and what sets up successful firms against others. So I love that. The people piece, don't forget about that. Great last line. So thank you again so much for being my guest today and for sharing your thoughts on M&A activity, what it means for our industry, what top performing firms are doing to differentiate themselves, and what smaller firms need to do to compete and just, embrace where they are and make sure they're doing what they love. I think that's really, really great advice. And thanks for sharing your journey from a school teacher to now partner M&A at one of the largest firms in the industry. So again, don't forget those career changers if you're looking to hire. they have wonderful transferable skills. Again, thank you so much for being my guest today. Suzanne Siracuse, thanks for listening. And I hope this episode leaves you feeling even more excited to be focused on the future.